Hi, welcome to NoLimitsRadioTV.com. I am Candice Fleszar-Smith, and if you haven't already, please subscribe to us on YouTube at No Limits Radio TV. We're also on Facebook, we're on Instagram, and we're on Twitter. So please follow us, and we're always happy to hear back on what you think of the show. Not many authors have their book already being written as a movie before the book is even released. But there is one author that's happening to right now, and that is Steve Hamilton. Steve has written many books about crime, many based in Michigan, some out of Michigan. He has won 2 Edgar Awards and countless other awards. Steve was recently traveling through our area on a book tour, and he happens to be my cousin, so I wanted to stop by and see him, and I also talked to him about his new book.
Detroit native Steve Hamilton is an author of mystery novels, including the New York Times best-selling Alex McKnight series. Hamilton has won 2 prestigious Edgar Awards, among other honors. Hamilton's upcoming novel, The Second Life of Nick Mason, tells the story of an ex-con who grapples with the consequences of a Faustian bargain he made to get out of prison. On the eve of its publication, Hamilton shockingly bought back his advance and dropped his publisher of nearly 20 years, citing disagreements over book promotions. The Second Life of Nick Mason is slated for a movie adaptation.
I read all of his novels, like Dave, and I think each one has a different appeal. I like his flashback writing to Detroit.
It's a good book. All of his books are good.
Steve Hamilton sat down with Candice at a recent book signing to talk about his latest book, Lockpicking, and his visit to a maximum security prison.
Are you comfortable? Okay, so your new book.
New book.
Second Life of
Nick Mason.
First of all, this is already being made into a movie. How crazy is that?
It's in the process. It's crazy, but it's just cool. I mean, writers like to scoff at movies and sort of pretend that they're above it or they don't want to have anything to do with it. But I think if you really put some truth serum in them, every writer likes the idea of seeing a book made into a movie, as long as it's done the right way. I mean, there's so many times when it doesn't get done the right way.
Right.
So, as long as you got the right people, it's just like it'd be so cool to go to a movie theater and have my family there,
right,
and do the whole thing. And maybe we were talking about taking it around and going to towns and having little premieres, like in Michigan.
Yeah, that'd be great.
If you have a town that's got a great old theater, come back to Michigan with that. That would just be so fun.
Yeah, so this is a new character for you, Nick Mason.
Nick Mason's new.
What is it about this character that you think is so different from your previous ones,
well,
which you have Alex McKnight, which is one you've written several books on.
Right.
How many do you have? 12?
10 books with Alex McKnight.
And more coming?
He's a former police officer who lives in a cabin up in Paradise, Michigan, which is a real place.
Yep.
And it was time to do something new. And Nick Mason is this career criminal who's in prison. And it's not the old gimmick where he's like an innocent man who's been sent to prison and he has to get out to prove he's innocent. I mean, he's a criminal who went there because he made a terrible mistake. So he's paying for it. And he has a chance to get out because somebody makes him this deal. And because he wants to see his family again. Especially wants to see his daughter again, who he hasn't seen in 5 years, and she's 9 years old now. He takes this deal.
How are you?
And doesn't really realize what he's getting into until he gets out, and it's too late because now he lives in this amazing place and has this amazing life, which is how the title, this is the second life. But the cost that he's paid to get out is that he's in this impossible situation now, and he has to do whatever he's told to do by this person who got him out. So in a way, he's sort of gone from one prison to another because he's not free.
Right. Right, and this is getting this book published was quite an experience for you because reading the Wall Street Journal recently, you broke from your other publisher.
Yes.
You actually bought
We bought back the contract.
Bought back the contract,
Right.
and this is a publisher you've been with from the beginning.
From
yes?
the beginning. I was loyal to them for 17 years.
So wow, and that's kind of scary. So you did that.
It was terrifying, yes.
And then you owned it, and then you found another publisher. How did this all go down in the book community and the author community and all of that? Like this, and is this an unusual thing to do?
It is unusual because to buy out your own contract is something that most people can't do, and most people wouldn't try to do it. And especially when they tell you that if you do something crazy like that, you're ending your career. So it was,
and you're like, maybe I am. Like,
maybe I am.
Yeah.
And so it was absolutely terrifying. The thought that we really were ending my career. So
I'll be right back.
it was just this amazing few days because the manuscript was out there. Because it was in galleys by then. So other editors were able to read it. And the next day, Shane got offers from 10 other publishers.
Wow. Okay. Because it was out there floating, and of course, you've already won 2 Edgar Awards and many other awards.
Right.
So you're known.
I was a known commodity, but still, it was still taking a big chance. And by the end of the next day, we had a new deal with Putnam. I mean, it was literally 24 hours later after we left. But that time, that week that we did this all, the response was so amazing, and it really wasn't. It felt like it wasn't about me anymore. So much it was about authors just seeing this story, and it sort of touched a nerve with a lot of people because they could imagine themselves being in that situation, or they had been in that situation before. So many authors are stuck in this spot where they just aren't getting the support that they've been promised. So I heard from a lot of people, and everybody was just great. Everybody was supportive. Nobody said, "What are you doing?" or "Why do you think you're, a big shot?" or whatever. I mean, nobody had it. There were no negative reactions at all.
Yeah.
All the authors were just, and I heard from so many of them.
It's great.
Yeah.
And what about the publishing community, like in the sense of the companies and all that? Obviously, you got a lot of offers. Does this change things, do you think? Could it change things down the road where
You mean like
authors are more likely to break off and take a chance?
I'd like to think that, I don't know, maybe in some small way it makes authors think that they might stand up for themselves a little bit more and expect promises to be kept a little bit more. And if that's true, then great.
Hooray.
Yeah.
Yeah. And Stephen King, I saw,
Stephen
endorsed
King
it on the
tweeted
back.
it. Yeah. We just woke up one morning and he had put that tweet out.
Yeah, which
And
says
it says, "Trust Stephen King. This book is the real deal."
Yeah, that's pretty cool.
And that was, I'm such a big Stephen King fan, and we didn't even know he had
That's
the book.
crazy.
We did not send him the book.
Right.
Nobody sent him the book. We had no idea.
Yeah.
But he's a big reader, and he writes a lot more in this genre now. He writes a lot more crime fiction.
Yeah.
So it was great to see.
Yeah, that's pretty fantastic.
Very
and then you just said, "Hey, can we use this?"
That's exactly what we did. I know somebody who knows somebody, and we got to his assistant and said he was happy. He's a very nice guy. He's gracious
Good.
and generous.
Good.
All the big authors in this field, for some reason, are just the greatest.
That's good.
Great
Was this
guy.
your first contact with him?
I had met him briefly before at a conference. We were at the same conference once, but I was not a close friend of his. And maybe I will be someday. I mean, he's a very busy guy. He's doing a lot of writing, but it was very cool to see.
And now you are a full-time writer.
Yes, I
You
am.
were at IBM for
30 years.
decades,
Yeah.
and now you're focusing strictly on this.
Right.
And it's interesting with authors because you have had a successful career. You have had a lot of really great books that have won huge awards, that have lots of readers, and I think it also shows how tough it is to be an author because you still worked your IBM job for all those decades before you felt the comfort level that all right, I can do this now. I can live off my writing.
Yeah, I was living a double life really for a long time, and it's pretty exhausting to work full time and then come home and do the thing that you really want to do.
And be a father. And
of course, be a father.
And
family,
have a family.
they all come first anyway. But no, it was pretty exhausting.
Yeah. And kind of speaking of a double life, I know when I've read your books, you know, I think the Alex McKnight books especially have some scenes in it that are still stuck in my head. You know, there's like the ice shanty scene, and there's the one where he's being dragged by a snowmobile, and another one where he's like stuck in some like corn silo or something with a bunch of scratch marks. Maybe it's not a corn silo; it's some farm thing. And he's like stuck inside. Stuck inside some sort of box that had scratch marks inside it. So, as you're reading, you know, as I'm reading these really dark things, I'm thinking, where the hell does this come from? Like, where, you know, well, you're a nice guy. You're not, you know.
Thank you.
So it's, you know.
I think,
you get this.
you know, we were talking about how these guys who write this stuff are so great. You know, Stephen King writes some really dark stuff, obviously.
Yes.
And Lee Child and Harlan Coben and Michael Connelly and Don Winslow. These are if you meet them in person, they're like the nicest, most laid back, you know, people in the world. And I think it's because they do get to work this stuff out. They get to kill people. They get to. Sue Grafton has this story that A is for Alibi was her way of killing off her ex-husband. And she's been much happier ever since then.
She's like, oh, that was therapeutic.
So I think we get we all have that. We all have this side. We all have this stuff because we're human beings. And I'm lucky enough to be able to work it out this way.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah. That's great. And we are second cousins.
We are second cousins.
We share great grandparents.
Great. Yeah.
And I know I've mentioned, you know, before reading some of the Alex McKnight books, you know, my sisters and I, we'd read it and think, boy, those guys in the bar sound a lot like the guys in our family, things like this. And, you know, how much do you feel like you're putting your family into it, your own experience, you know, and I think of some of the really evil stuff you have in there, and I'm like, oh, we have some pretty screwed up people in our family, so, you know, you can take it from that, too.
That's right. It's just, that's what a writer does. Everybody that you meet, everywhere you go, all the experiences you have. It's not like you take a person, I'm going to put that person in a book. But the impressions people make, the way they make you feel being around them, that's what you sort of end up holding on to, and you sort of know that you're going to use that someday. If you meet somebody who's really a character, you know that you're going to, you know, use something about that someday, or some experience especially. You know, going to that prison was something I knew I would use someday, or going to places, going to Misery Bay, which is a real place. I knew as soon as I got to that place that I would use that someday. Because you're always sort of looking for things that would work that way.
Yeah. And the research you do for your books, and I remember I think it was Lock Artist, I remember you just posting on Facebook, like, hey, if you were in a yacht, where would you hide the safe?
Oh, right, yeah, exactly.
You know, stuff like that. So you do a lot of research for the Lock Artist. You learned how to pick a lock.
I learned how to pick locks, and I still practice.
You know, your description of that is, I feel like I'm doing it, you know, which is one reason why that also is being turned into a movie down the road after the Nick Mason one comes out. Yeah. So for your research, what are some of your experiences in your research? Some surprising things that you've had? I know with Nick Mason, you've talked about being in the prison and how that felt.
And I got to spend a lot of time in Chicago with this book, and I have a friend who's a homicide detective, so I did a lot of talking with him about what it's like to be a cop now in Chicago, which is not a real fun job right now, after all the stuff that's been going on there, and how outnumbered you are. There's 12,000 cops in Chicago, and there's 100,000 gang members. I mean, just think about that in pure terms of the math of waking up every day and you're outnumbered 8-1. It's a really tough job. But just talking to him about what it feels like to do that and how he gets through the day and how he does his job, and people like to talk about what they do. And the safecracker that I work with, he loved to talk about opening safes, because that's all he ever wanted to do in his life. So
and he was a top safecracker, right? Like
he's probably the best safecracker in the world, and that's all he does. Every day he goes and opens up a safe somewhere. So that was but he loves talking about it. So you just get him going, and he talks about all these stories, and you try to keep up with it. And it always comes down to, what does it feel like? What does this feel like when you make that last turn, and you feel that thing just click, and you know you've just opened that safe. What's that feel like?
Like, what is your body doing, and
Yeah,
what is your
what-
head doing?
Right,
Yeah.
exactly. And that's why he had me, learn some of this stuff myself, so I could start to experience it. I'm never going to be a safecracker,
Right.
but I can pick a lock.
Yeah. We have a little padlock at home I can't figure out. I should
Oh
have
yeah,
just brought the thing.
those are really. Those are
You would have been like, boom,
just,
boom,
just
boom,
the combination
boom,
locks with the
Yeah.
'Cause those are all based on number. Well, the whole series
Dang
of
it,
numbers.
I should have
yeah.
brought it the next
Right.
book tour. I'm
Okay,
bringing
bring
that
it.
to help
Bring
keep
it.
you practicing. In your process, what is, obviously there are a lot of great things about this. You're getting out thoughts and emotions and fantasies and all that. What's the worst part? Like, what's the worst thing about writing? Like, for example, I have a friend who's writing now who is like, she's authored things before. This is her
Right.
first fiction. So she's like describing a room. She's like, can't I just say they walked into the room? Like, why do I have to describe like the ceiling and the lights and the window
Well,
and this came,
Number one, you don't have to do all that because readers probably skip most of that anyway. But, I don't know. Some days it's just harder than others, I guess. Those are the days you still have to do it because that's what you need to do. I think that's the hard part. Is that as much as you love it, not every day. It's not going to come easy every day, but you still have to do it.
Do you have a trick for writer's block?
I really don't.
Works for you?
I really don't. Just do it. Just writers with deadlines don't get writer's block. Basically, generally speaking.
You just have to keep writing.
You just keep going.
Yeah. And in your process, do you do a lot of pre-planning where you're like, this is generally how it's going to go, or do the characters kind of write the book themselves as you go?
I used to do it, just go and find out, and now I'm a lot more upfront about where it's going. I've just gotten better at that because you really have to at some point. You have to be more efficient about it because you can't just afford to just start and see where it goes. As much as I love doing that, and it still does do that sometimes, but it's a good idea to really have an idea now.
Okay. Because did you end up backtracking and sort of like, oh, that doesn't work, I got to rewrite that part, or
that
this doesn't sound right?
You can go down a dead end, yeah. If you don't know where you're going.
With your book now, which is a new character, and then you're also writing another book that you're about to turn in, you said, for Alex McKnight, which is your classic character that you've had for decades. How are these different? Alex, you're probably much more connected to. I know you've said that if someone were to make a movie about Alex, you'd kind of be like, oh, because you're so close to him, versus making this movie about Nick Mason where you're like, it's my character, but I'm willing to let go a little more.
I think with Alex, I was more worried about the place than the character. I think you could get Alex right. I'm just worried about getting Paradise right and getting the UP right and getting his characters that are around him right. If the right person could do Alex, then great. For Nick, I sort of, he's more accessible. He's in Chicago, he's a criminal, he's out of prison. You can sort of get a handle on that a lot easier, I think. And especially if you have a really good screenwriter like Richard Wenk, who's working on it right now, who's done The Equalizer, who's doing the next Reacher movie. He's really got the right sensibility for it. So I know he's doing a great job. That's just a given. So if you get the right director and the right star, I think it's going to be good. I think it's going to be great. It's just trusting the right people, like a lot of things in life.
And for this to already be turned into a movie when it's just coming out, which I would think would be atypical. Usually books get really big.
Yeah.
Unless you're Stephen King or something, where they're like, Stephen King's going to write a book, let's make a movie. What is it, do you think, about this book where they're like, this is it, like this is going to be a movie?
Well, I think it's just the idea behind it and the situation that he's in. That you can describe it so quickly in just a few words, but then as soon as you get it, it's like, that is cool. That is something that you can already see sort of the movie already. Which is what a movie pitch should be. It should be able to just 25 words, you got it. So you can get the idea here that quickly. And I think that's why it appealed to the right people at the right time as soon as they heard it. Plus all the publicity from last year with the move. I think that raised the profile a little bit and made people aware of the book more so even before it came out.
And you as an author, obviously you've left your day job. You're done with that.
Yeah.
You're doing new characters. You're getting movies made when the book comes out. Like, where are you in all this? Like, how are you? It's a big switch for you. Not just the publisher switch, but there's so much change right now.
Right.
And like, how do you feel about all that? And I know you're a fairly modest guy. I think I remember a previous book tour where I'm like, for goodness sake, start a Facebook page. And you're like, no, I don't need one, you know. And,
no, you need
now
one.
You have one. Now you have one. But you know, where are you at? What are you thinking in all of
I'm
this?
just trying to keep up with it one day at a time.
Yeah.
And stay myself and take care of my family and do the writing and do the work and not worry about all that other stuff.
Yeah.
I mean, worry about it, but concentrate on what you have control over, which is the next word on the page.
And as we get older, we learn to let go of what we can't control.
Yes, that's the idea.
Okay, I did want to ask about your readership. Do you see that as you're doing different characters and that sort of thing, are you seeing different people at book signings and different people reading you?
I hope I'm just seeing more people.
Yeah.
But it's funny. These are pretty rough books, but it's still mostly women who read crime fiction, just books in general. So that's always interesting to me to see. And it's amazing when you see like an elderly woman who you wouldn't have thought would go for some of the really rough stuff and tell you how much she loves the books.
Yeah.
That's always kind of amazing to me.
Yeah, that's great.
But it's great.
It's good escapism for.
Yeah, why not?
And I would like you to sign my book.
My pleasure.
So you can sign it to my favorite second cousin
Of course.
of all time. You can put whatever embellishments you'd like.
My pleasure. Glad you came out.
This is great. Thank you.
Thank you. So good to see you.
I'm glad we can see you when you're out.
Yeah, I'm glad.
And thanks, Steve, for letting everyone know that I am, in fact, your favorite second cousin. That's part of the official record now because it's in that book. So thank you for joining us on the show today. And remember, you can always find us, NoLimitsRadioTV.com. That's our website. Please go to our YouTube, which is No Limits Radio TV, and subscribe to us because then you always get the latest videos that we're doing. And we're also on Instagram and Twitter. So look us up on No Limits Radio TV. Thanks for joining us, and we'll see you next week.